All right, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. We're going to ask for a quick word from Senator Meyer here. And then we will get started with our public hearing. Thank you.
Is this one on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Senator Greg Meyer, and I am so pleased to have so many people here. I appreciate the applause. However, I have a few things to tell you, and since you applauded, I will tell you this one. You're going to hear a whole bunch of rules from our friends at DEQ, and one of them is that during the public hearing, they're going to ask you to refrain from applauding or snapping or making any noise, and I want to reinforce that. Here's the reason why. One, anytime that you take away from the speaker is time taken away from the public hearing as a whole, and we expect that we'll have enough speakers tonight to fill up the whole time allotted. So please don't steal speakers' time. Number two, everything that gets recorded gets transcribed for the public record, and it's just hard on the poor transcriptionist ears if there's applause or snapping or something. So this is what I would suggest as a former camp counselor. Yeah, if you want to show your appreciation for something that someone is saying at the podium, give them some jazz hands when they turn around and they're coming back to you. That's a great way to show the appreciation and let the public record be the public record. I also want to say thank you to DEQ for shifting the public hearing from Hillsborough to Chapel Hill so that we can all be here today. There you go, you get the jazz hands. And also, they brought 10 or 12 staff people here because they knew that we'd have such a great turnout in Chapel Hill, and so I want to thank all those state employees for giving up this evening to be here to hear the public comments. I want to thank all the advocacy organizations who made sure that we got folks here. I knew that Chapel Hill would show up for a good chance to comment on important issues to you, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say as well. I want you to know one additional thing, which is that if you haven't heard about it yet, we have already been for a year in a very important planning process where all of our local government units, as well as many community organizations and the university, have been in a joint planning process for what happens as the university transitions away from coal and burnable fuels and shifts to a cleaner energy mix, and what then happens to the rail line that connects the cogeneration facility through the rest of our community, and how do we transform that rail line into an opportunity for non-automotive transportation, for connection to new housing opportunities, for economic development opportunities. And so we've had an amazing process, and if you are interested in helping with that type of clean community transition over the next few years, we would love to have your interest and your involvement, not just tonight, but in the ongoing work that's going to be necessary to make that happen. Thank you for coming tonight for the public comment. Thank you for making sure that it is a respectful and productive dialogue for our community and for the state of North Carolina and for these wonderful state employees that are here to hear your comments tonight. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Senator Meyer.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This public hearing is now open. This event is being recorded and will be posted for public review. My name is Melinda Willannon. I am the Regional Supervisor from the Division of Air Quality's Mooresville Regional Office. I've been appointed to be the hearing officer for this public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive your comments for consideration in the issuance of an air quality permit to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. UNC has submitted an application to add a new engineered pelletized fuel to the list of permitted fuels for their two boilers, units 6 and 7. Currently, the boilers are permitted to burn coal, natural gas, number 2 fuel oil, and wood. The address for the site is 575 West Cameron Avenue, CB 1858, Chapel Hill, Orange County, North Carolina, 27599. All forms of comments will be received and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. The Director of the Division of Air Quality, Mr. Mike Abrazinskis, has decided to conduct this public hearing as part of the comment period to receive your comments. The public hearing announcement was originally published in the Daily Tar Heel and on the DAQ website on December 4th, 2024. After a venue and start time change, the announcement was republished both in the Raleigh News and Observer and on the Division of Air Quality's website on December 17th, 2024, and again in the Daily Tar Heel with corrections on January 15th, 2025. During this public hearing, we will be receiving oral comments from those individuals who registered to speak at this event. If you have not registered to speak but wish to provide oral comments, please return to the registration table in the lobby to sign up. Joining me for this hearing tonight are representatives from the Department of Environmental Quality and the Division of Air Quality's Raleigh Central Office and Raleigh Regional Office. From DEQ Central Office, environmental coordinators Corey Williams and Paige Azarita, and Sam Chan, Director of Public Affairs. From the DAQ Raleigh Central Office, Taylor Hartsfield, Deputy Director for Air Quality, Sean Taylor, Division of Air Quality's Public Information Officer, Mark Swella, Title V Permitting Section Chief, and from the Raleigh Regional Office, Don Reddix, Regional Supervisor, Jeff Harris, our timekeeper, Will Wyke, Rex Gagos, Nathan Mullins, Jimmy Lewis, and Jimmy Reske. I would like to thank any local, city, or county officials who may have joined us tonight. We appreciate your interest in the application and draft permit. The comment period for this draft permit opened on December 4th, 2024, and will close on Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. In addition to your oral comments tonight, the division is also accepting comments via email to daq.publiccomments@deq.nc.gov with the subject line UNC.24A, and by phone to a voicemail box at 919-707-8448. Also, if you have written comments that you wish to submit, we have a box available near the microphone. All forms of comments will be received, and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. Copies of the permit application, the draft permit, and draft permit review and other information concerning the permit application are available to the public at the NC Department of Environmental Quality, Raleigh Regional Office, located at 3800 Barrett Drive, Raleigh, NC 27609, and the Division of Air Quality Central Office, Air Permitting Section, located at 217 West Jones Street, Suite 4000 in Raleigh, North Carolina. These materials are available during normal business hours at these locations. Please call in advance to make an appointment. A copy of the draft air permit and draft permit review are also available on the Division of Air Quality's website at ncair.org, that's ncair.org, in the section titled Public Notices. The order of events for this hearing is as follows. First, Mark Swella, Title V Permitting Section Chief, will discuss the application and draft air quality permit. This will be followed by the public comment period. Only those individuals who have registered to speak will be called on to present oral comments. To hear as many speakers as possible, oral statements will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. We want to provide as much time as possible for all speakers to be heard. This public hearing is scheduled to adjourn as close to 8 p.m. as possible. We will call the names of each registered speaker in order of your registration. The first speaker will be called. We will also announce the name of the next speaker in the queue so they can prepare to provide comments. Please proceed to the microphone when your name is called. Your time will start when you begin speaking. We will keep track of your time and will announce when your 3 minutes have expired. Please respect the time of all who wish to present oral comments tonight by adhering to the time limits and closing your remarks as quickly as possible once time is up. Cross-examination of the person presenting comments or me, the hearing officer, will not be allowed. However, as the hearing officer, I may ask questions to the speaker for clarification. Questions directed to Division of Air Quality staff members will not be answered during this hearing. If you have questions for DAQ staff, we can provide you with our contact information so that you may contact us during normal business hours. We ask that when recognized speakers are presenting their comments, the audience refrain from making noise, including applauding, talking over speakers, or making any other noise that could impact the integrity of the audio recording. This ensures that I can hear all public comments clearly, that all public comments can be captured as part of the official record, and that all speakers are treated with respect when it is their turn to speak. After receiving comments this evening, the public hearing will be closed. However, the period for submitting comments does not close until Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. Again, all forms of comments will be received and all will have equal consideration in the final decision on whether to issue the permit. I will now call on Mark Swella to discuss the application and the draft air quality permit.
Pardon the interruption. Before Mark Swella presents the permit, I would like to remind everyone that we would like everyone to take a seat. This is at the request of the fire marshal and also to help us gauge how much capacity we have in the room for additional people to come in. We are starting to fill up our overflow room, so it's important we get everyone into a seat, and that way we can gauge how many more people can come into the room and take a seat. Thank you for your cooperation.
Taylor,
They are? Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll move those. Apologies.
That's my bag, so he can just.
But yeah, if you want to indicate where there's empty seats, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Suella. I am the Title V Permitting Chief with the North Carolina Division of Air Quality, and I am representing the permit engineer Russell Braswell for this application. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, or simply UNC, operates a combined heat and power facility in Chapel Hill. This facility currently generates electricity and steam for use on UNC's campus using multiple boiler units. 2 of the boilers at the combined heat and power facility, boilers 6 and 7, are currently permitted to burn natural gas, number 2 fuel oil, wood, and coal. In recent years, UNC has burned natural gas and coal in these boilers in approximately equal amounts. UNC plans to add a new fuel to the list of permitted fuels for these boilers. The proposed new fuel is an engineered pelletized fuel, simply a fuel pellet, that is produced by a company in Wisconsin called Convergent, using material taken from packaging industry. The fuel source has been permitted for use in other Title V facilities in the United States, including other universities. UNC has stated that if the fuel pellets are successful, it, quote, plans to eventually lower the use of fossil fuels in favor of this new fuel pellet, end quote. UNC has also stated that the use of the new fuel pellet will not increase the capacity of these boilers, and UNC does not expect an increase in utilization of these boilers as a result of the fuel pellets. In the application, UNC performed emission calculations by replacing 100% of coal use with the new fuel pellets. In other words, the scenario presented in the application was that UNC burns natural gas and fuel pellets in approximately equal amounts, rather than natural gas and coal. This represents the greatest possible change from current operations. The boilers are subject to federal regulations, including National Emissions Standard for Hazardous Air Pollutants, abbreviated NESHAP, Subpart 5D, and New Source Performance Standards, abbreviated NSPS, Subpart DB. The boilers are also subject to a compliance insurance monitoring plan. In addition, UNC is required to comply with state regulations as codified in the North Carolina Administrative Code, including a site-specific emission limit for sulfur dioxide. It should be noted that NSPS Subpart DB allows for a boiler to burn wood fuel, and NESHAP Subpart 5D allows for a boiler to burn biomass fuel. These rules include definitions for the terms wood and biomass, which are broad. For example, NSPS DB includes wood, any derivative fuel, or residual thereof in any form in the definition of wood. Based on these broad definitions, the fuel pellets will be considered both wood and biomass. In addition, Convergent, the fuel pellet manufacturer, has previously obtained concurrence from the U.S. EPA that the fuel pellets are a non-hazardous secondary material and are therefore not solid waste as defined in 40 CFR 241.3. Emissions from these boilers are controlled by bag filters, calcium carbonate injection, and sorbent injection. UNC will continue to operate these control systems. Emissions from these boilers are monitored using continuous monitors for nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide, a continuous opacity monitor for particulate emissions, and annual emissions testing for other pollutants such as carbon monoxide. UNC will continue to monitor emissions using these methods in order to demonstrate compliance with the applicable emission limits. UNC is a major stationary source under the Prevention of Significant Deterioration, abbreviated PSD. In the application, UNC showed that the proposed use of the new fuel pellet does not constitute a major modification under PSD. DAQ evaluated potential emissions of toxic air pollutants from the boilers. As a conservative approach, DAQ modeled emissions of toxic air pollutants using the worst-case emission factors available for coal and wood. This modeling demonstrated that each pollutant was less than their respective acceptable ambient level. This modeling was approved by the division's Air Quality Analysis Branch on September 11, 2024. DAQ considered the potential of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, emissions as a result of the proposed fuel pellets. In the application, UNC included a material analysis that showed the fuel pellets contained PFAS compounds at a concentration of approximately 8 nanograms per gram. Assuming that UNC replaces all of the current facility's use of coal with fuel pellets, and assuming that all PFAS contained in the fuel pellets is emitted, then the use of fuel pellets would result in an annual emissions rate of PFAS compounds of approximately 1 pound per year. DAQ will require UNC to sample all fuel pellet shipments received to determine their PFAS content. DAQ will require UNC to perform site-specific emissions testing while using the fuel pellets to determine the actual emission rates of PFAS while using the fuel pellets. After performing this test, UNC will be limited to using the amount of fuel pellets based on that test. For example, if UNC was burning 50% fuel pellets during the test, then UNC would be limited to burning no more than 50% fuel pellets in the future. The draft permit includes conditions to ensure ambient levels of all pollutants beyond the facility's fence line comply with federal and state emission standards, including applicable health-based standards. The facility will be subject to record-keeping and reporting requirements and regular inspections.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, we will hear from those who registered to provide oral comments this evening. When your name is called, please proceed to the microphone. To ensure our records are complete, please clearly state your name and who you are representing. Your comments will be recorded, so please speak clearly toward the microphone. I will do my best to pronounce your names correctly and apologize in advance for any errors. We will now begin taking your comments. The first commenter will be Catherine Shar, followed by Kathy Kaufman.
Hello. Is this time limited?
Yeah,
Okay.
3 minutes.
My name is Catherine Shore. I'm representing myself. I work in the town of Chapel Hill, and I'm really concerned about the bridge that will be created by using pelletized, engineered products as a fuel source. I worry that it externalizes some of the air quality impacts to other communities, and really doesn't focus on a long-term solution that addresses our current climate crisis. I'm in college, I went to UNC, I lived right next to the cogeneration facility for a year. It's incredibly disruptive. I know you're not here permitting the facility itself, but to continue to issue permits to a facility that really shouldn't represent the university's energy future just seems wrong to me. I also want to point out, and others might point out too, some of the disparate impacts that this site has. You all prepared an environmental justice report for this site. Nowhere in that report did I see an acknowledgement of mitigating factors of the site itself. the recommendations were solely on the public participation plan, which is meaningful and important, but just not enough. So I encourage you to really examine the environmental justice implications of this site as you're permitting and monitoring and enforcing your rules. And where they're sourcing their materials from, we can't ignore that fact, even if it's in another state. Thank you. I guess I'll just close by saying, I don't want this to come off as like a, yes, we want a renewable energy, but just not that kind, or yes, I want affordable housing, but just not here. That's not my energy that I'm trying to bring to my comment tonight. The comment and my position is, as a university that puts itself on a pedestal of its research aptitude and innovation and the power that it wields in this community, I just wish it would do better. And I wish you would hold them to a higher standard. Thanks.
All right, the next commenter is Kathy Kaufman, followed by Melissa McCullough.
Hi, my name is Kathy Kaufman. I'm here representing the Orange Chatham Group of the Sierra Club. I'm also retired from a 29-year career doing air quality policy at the EPA and RTP. Let me start by saying that the UNC plant is a long-standing issue in an old... UNC plant is a long-standing issue in an old barge system, as there are no longer pure solutions in environmental management. It's a matter of weighing trade-offs to determine the best possible practical outcome. With this in mind, we do urge you to reject UNC's request to burn the waste pellets. The issue here is whether to replace a known problem, coal, with a possibly worse problem, waste pellets which contain plastics. The known problem is not ideal, but the plant meets standards and is efficient. The unknown problem could be worse. Long term, we want to see UNC decarbonize. We know this is complicated as the plant provides more than electricity. It provides steam and chilled water to heat the campus buildings and serves considerable needs of the UNC Medical Center. We would not want the plant replaced with gas boilers in each building. Nevertheless, we believe that UNC must invest in finding an appropriate long-term solution that doesn't include burning problematic waste pellets, even as an ostensibly stopgap measure. We say ostensibly because although UNC has presented its plan to burn pellets as a temporary pilot, nothing in the draft permit will limit UNC to a pilot period. It's a standard permit modification that allows UNC to burn pellets for the length of the permit term, which can be renewed. If this permit modification moves forward, it should be revised to reflect that this is a pilot and be limited to a temporary period.
In 300 feet.
In addition to climate concerns, we have significant local air pollution concerns with the burning of pellets consisting of waste paper and 15 to 49% plastic. The biggest issue with this is while the plant meets present standards, we know that burning pellets will introduce, as you said, uncontrolled and unquantified emissions of toxic PFAS into the air. We don't yet know the impact of the uncontrolled PFAS, and as yet, there are no federal or state air emission standards for PFAS. We're also concerned about the increased emissions of harmful pollutants like NOx, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, and lead. These pollutants are have well-studied serious health impacts. This is of significant concern to the local community, which includes Chapel Hill's oldest Black neighborhoods and the UNC campus and hospitals. Therefore, we believe that the permit changes should not be allowed until the health risks of PFAS are better understood and estimated, both from the air emissions and from the residual waste ash as compared to the present system. Finally, phasing out solid fuels altogether would eliminate the train now carrying coal with its emissions, and we could use the rail line potentially for other community purposes, such as a bike ped route from campus to county. This also would help reduce air pollution overall and improve our quality of life.
Thank you. Next commenter is Melissa McCullough, and followed by Jeff Ryan.
Good evening. I'm Melissa McCullough. I'm also a retired EPA employee. I was an environmental scientist for 3 decades at the US EPA, a community sustainability expert, and a member of the Chapel Hill Town Council, but I am here tonight representing myself. There's little I can add to the science and environmental quality comments from the Sierra Club and the ones that will come from the Southern Environmental Law Center, although I echo them completely. Instead, I want to address the community issues. This is an old problem. The surrounding neighborhoods have had to breathe the pollution from this plant since decades before there were even air pollution laws. This is an environmental justice issue for the historically black neighborhoods where the people who built and served our university have lived for generations. Chapel Hill is already suffering from the UNC's mishandled coal ash waste from decades ago, back when they didn't know how bad it was. UNC is at a turning point that mirrors the rest of the world. How to assure necessary heat and power into a future where coal is dirty, finite, and increasingly expensive. Fracked gas is not better for the climate, and renewable options aren't always easy to retrofit into complex existing systems. We all know this is not easy, but not having an easy answer doesn't justify this technological detour that will only delay actually finding a good solution. The requested permit would allow burning pellets indefinitely. The existing plant is a known but controlled problem. But this permit application offers no way to reliably estimate the resulting pollution or the health and environmental impacts to the surrounding community. We already know that big problems are created when decisions are knowingly made in ignorance of how bad the problem could be. For example, we've got coal ash under our police station near Bowling Creek. The bottom line is really this. Although ostensibly for climate purposes, this action would barely improve greenhouse gas emissions. The emissions of PFAS would be unquantified and uncontrolled. The emissions of other toxic air pollutants would increase and affect the health of the surrounding community. And there would still be waste materials, but now of unknown composition. I urge the DEQ to reject this permit application or for UNC to withdraw it, because we are not assured that the marginal benefits of this proposal are worth the potential impacts. If the university wants to be a good neighbor and global citizen, they need to find a permanent, clean, and sustainable solution.
Thank you. The next commenter is Jeff Ryan, followed by Kelly McChesney.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jeff Ryan. I just completed a 41-year career at EPA where I was a research scientist specifically in the area of combustion emissions characterization, but also methods development, and was the lead for the PFAS test method you're probably going to use. What I want to convey here is that whereas the plastic may be a viable alternative to the coal, there needs to be due diligence in making sure that you investigate the emissions in a comprehensive way. If you're looking at PFAS are very, very difficult to destroy. And the biggest concern that EPA has is the formation of products of incomplete combustion. You have an increase in VOCs here. What are those VOCs? What will you do to characterize those VOCs? Are you going to be looking at semi-volatile organic compounds which have the greatest potential for deleterious health effects? That's where the polyaromatic hydrocarbons are. That's where the dioxins are. So going forward, make sure that the appropriate tests are included so that you truly assess the trade-offs from coal to this material.
Thank you. The next commenter is Kelly McChesney, followed by Megan Kemble.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for listening to those of us who are directly affected by the UNC power plant. I also thank Triangle Blog and No Coal UNC for helping to inform our community about the issue. And I'm grateful to UNC's considering alternatives to coal, but I want to emphasize a crucial point raised by Kirk Reese in his 2022 opinion piece. If passed as prologue, the institution will take the easiest route, switching to natural gas or biofuels and maintaining the facility. The real question is not the fuel, but why does the university need a heavy emissions industrial facility in a densely populated downtown neighborhood? As a resident of Macaulay Street directly behind the plant, I can attest to the physical, mental, and emotional impacts. Our home has physically shaken from unexplained incidents at the plant, and we are given curt dismissive explanations when we call. We are now tracking these events, even considering installing air monitors ourselves. But my greatest concern is for the health of my 3-year-old son, my family, neighbors, and the hundreds of thousands of people in our nearby community. UNC proposes using non-hazardous, non-waste fuel, which is simply inaccurate. The proposed fuel involves plastic combustion, which releases a host of dangerous byproducts, carbon monoxide, NOx, VOCs, and lead, substances more hazardous to human health even at low levels than CO2. Some plastics, when incinerated, break down into compounds that are thousands of times more potent than CO2 at trapping heat and can remain in the atmosphere for millennia. We have to consider the human cost. The transformation of plastic into nanoparticles means these toxic substances will enter our bodies more easily, accumulating in our organs and tissues. Studies already show that even small amounts of microplastics can lead to serious health risks, increased chance for heart attacks, stroke, developmental issues, autoimmune disorders. Research like the Varfella study linked microplastics found in arteries to a 450% increased risk of heart attack, strokes, and death. That's comparable to asbestos exposure. UNC has published studies from its own researchers showing that PFAS contamination in the air is already a significant concern in places like Fayetteville, North Carolina. And yet pursuing using plastic fuel as well as the future local production of plastic pellets without fully considering the consequences. The task of transitioning away from coal to cleaner, safer energy is difficult, but it's not impossible. The failure to take this seriously will only be an enormous tax, both for the health of this community and for the long-term financial, environmental sustainability of the university and the state. I urge the leadership of UNC and the state to think carefully about their legacy. The risks of poisoning the surrounding community are real. We've seen the dangers of environmental negligence, and we urge you to make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Megan Kimball, followed by Casey Warbeck.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Megan Kimball, and I'm a senior attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'm also a Carolina alum, and my office is not far from the power plant. I'm here to express opposition to UNC's request to amend its air permit to burn plastic-containing pellets at its power plant, and I urge DAQ to reject its application. For nearly 100 years, the surrounding community, which includes 2 of Chapel Hill and Carborough's historically black neighborhoods, has borne the burden of this facility's pollution. Authorizing the burning of pellets containing plastic introduces new and untested risks, including exposure to harmful PFAS chemicals and other contaminants that could endanger our water supply and community health. The lack of rigorous long-term studies on these pellets only compounds our concerns. The university should prioritize a permanent solution that moves away from fossil fuels altogether, not a stopgap measure that continues to harm the environment and the residents nearby. UNC has a unique opportunity to lead by example in addressing the climate crisis and advancing environmental justice. Instead of wasting time and resources on outdated and harmful technologies, the university should decarbonize its energy systems and adopt clean, renewable solutions. Transitioning away from the use of solid fuels aligns with UNC's broader sustainability goals and acknowledges the lived experiences of communities impacted by the power plant's pollution. Moreover, UNC's energy transition should align with a larger forward-thinking vision for the university and the surrounding community. As Senator Meyer mentioned earlier, for more than 2 years, a diverse group of stakeholders, including representatives from local governments, UNC students and faculty, and community members, has been working together to reimagine the nearby rail line. If UNC fully decarbonizes and eliminates the need for trains to transport coal or pellets to the power plant, this rail line could be transformed into a multimodal rail trail, similar to the Atlanta Beltline. Such a transformation would connect people, drive economic growth, and expand housing opportunities. Beyond improving quality of life, it would position UNC, the towns, and the county as leaders in innovative, equitable development. If anyone here would like to learn more or get involved in this effort, please see Theo Nord, the redhead sitting over there after the hearing. We don't have to choose between the health of our climate, the health of our neighbors, and the university's energy needs. We can do better than plastic pellets. We can work together to chart a sustainable, equitable, and transformative path forward that benefits everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. speaker is Casey Marbeck, followed by Kirk Ross.
Good evening. My name is Casey Moravec. I'm an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center, and I'm here tonight to urge DAQ to reject UNC's application and not issue this permit. The pellets that UNC seeks to burn in place of coal are manufactured by Convergent. This is a company that takes pre-consumer industrial waste from 100 different suppliers and shapes this waste into pellets. These pellets can be comprised of an enormous range of paper and plastics. However, Convergent maintains and DAQ assumes that the pellet composition will remain consistent over time. But we know this not to be true. UNC's own permit application included documentation from Convergent that their pellets were comprised of 15 to 40% plastic, the remainder paper. And our research has shown that the pellets can contain up to 49% plastic. This is a huge range of plastic content that DAQ did not account for in calculating the emissions impact of this proposed project. It has thus failed to demonstrate that UNC will comply with state and federal air quality requirements. The variability in the pellet composition means that unknown pollutants in unquantified levels will be released into the community, causing unknown and unregulated harm to those who are exposed. The evidence makes clear that DAQ has not and cannot assess the air quality impact of allowing UNC to burn these pellets. UNC's permit application must be denied. On top of all these unknowns, what we do know about these pellets demonstrates that they are not a clean fuel alternative. Burning the pellets will decrease, but not eliminate sulfur dioxide and particulate matter emissions. But emissions of NOx, carbon monoxide, lead, and VOCs will increase, some in higher amounts than contemplated. In particular, the NOx emissions are calculated based on unrepresentative data. Data from a facility that actually burns Convergent's pellets and has the same boiler type as UNC demonstrates the NOx emissions will be much higher. This means that the project must be considered a major modification requiring installation of the best available control technology and modeling of ambient air impacts for these emissions. Emissions of several toxic air pollutants will also increase dramatically. This includes benzene, which is a known carcinogen, where emissions are expected to be 80 times that of coal, and acrolein, which targets the respiratory system, where emissions are expected to be 342 times that of coal. It is unacceptable for DAQ to put this community at risk of breathing in these toxic pollutants. DAQ must deny the permit, and we urge UNC to take a step back and work towards a long-term clean energy solution that protects the well-being of their community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Kirk Ross, followed by Diane Covington.
And I'm just going to make a quick announcement. We have filled our overflow room, and we're also getting tight on space here. We're going to fill it up as much as possible, but if we reach capacity, we may be asking those who are not speaking or who have already spoke to please leave so that we can allow other speakers into the room. Thank you.
Thanks for holding this public hearing and moving it closer to campus and the cogen plant. My name is Kirk Ross. This is my 40th year in Chapel Hill, Carborough. As a reporter here, I covered the university and town government and plant. For the last decade, I've covered the legislature, focusing on environmental legislation, politics, and policy. I interacted with your department or your division during the Gen X crisis a few years back. I think DAQ should take a step back, and the university should pursue other alternatives. Like a lot of people, my first thought on seeing the proposal was what's in those pellets. With the permit application, we got some answers, and I understand the product better. And I also understand how the companies that provide the feedstock view it. It's a landfill diversion, a way for manufacturing operations to green up. I get that. Your job at the Division of Air Quality, however, is not to decide if this is a worthy idea, but rather, is it appropriate to burn this product in the heart of the downtown in which we're all gathered? My main concern is that this permit allows the cogen plant to become an incinerator for the plastic, fiber, and paper industries. Some people say burning this stuff is a good idea, but it's hard to believe that any of them would advocate setting up shop in our downtown or any downtown. If this application came in as a fresh permit, it's the kind of thing DAQ wouldn't even let in the door. But because it's a modification, we're apt to not see the forest for the trees. If this plan is adopted, there will almost certainly be an UNC pellet plant, which would produce pellets from a different feedstock than the plant in Green Bay. You'll have to be on top of that, and since a lot of industries here use PFAS and related contaminants in their process, you're really going to have to be on top of that. I'm not convinced that the university and DAQ are ready to take on the kind of rigorous and transparent monitoring and testing the public deserves. The 2018 PFAS study provided with the permit application was way inadequate. It's 2024, and that's not what a solid PFAS assessment looks like. You need a better look at what's in those pellets and how it's going to act with the specific combustion on Cameron Avenue. It's difficult and expensive to track PFAS, as someone just said, and its precursors, especially when it's airborne and it's settled into a waterway, a pond, or reservoir. Maybe that's why I can't think of one PFAS-related action from DAQ or anyone at DEQ that involves adding a novel source of PFAS into a community. You can't dismiss concerns about PFAS or any other potentially hazardous materials in the pellets by just saying there's so little of it, there's no need to worry. It's a fact of life, as well as science, that it only takes a little bit of shit to make it a shit sandwich. Please be diligent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next commenter is Diane Covington, followed by Amelia Covington.
My name is Diane Covington. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Wood pellets as a renewable source of green energy is controversial at best, with many studies showing mixed results. A peer-reviewed study published in Science Direct December 2023, co-authored by Sarah, I'm going to butcher this, Arun Ashalan, who's Deputy Director of the Institute for the Environment at UNC, found that U.S. biomass burn facilities emit on average 2.8 times the amount of pollution of power plants that burn coal, oil, or natural gas. Concluding in part, quote, our findings suggest that the emissions from this growing sector may be significantly underestimated, unquote. I've been a resident of Chapel Hill since 1996 and raised 2 children in our home, which is 1.6 miles from the UNC power plant. I am a cancer survivor and I have chronic lung disease. I am concerned about the negative impacts of burning wood pellets, including, but not limited to, increased emissions of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, acroleum, particulate matter, lead, and VOCs, some of which are known carcinogens. While Convergen, the company that has proposed to supply the wood pellets, has claimed negligible PFAS are emitted as a result of burning, what is important to note is that the composition of the pellets is variable, as reported by the company itself, with the pellets containing from 15 to 40% plastic, with some reports up to 49% plastics. Due to the variability in pellet composition, the exact emissions remain unknown. How frequently is UNC going to monitor emissions, and how can we, as a community, be assured our health and the health of our environment will not be negatively impacted beyond the impact of burning coal? Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter is Amelia Covington, followed by Robert Sistick.
Hello, my name is Amelia Covington, and I'm proud to call Chapel Hill my hometown. I'm also representing the No Coal UNC Coalition, a group of neighbors, students, and nonprofit organizations that have been advocating for a clean energy Carolina for more than 4 years. And as our name indicates, we are eager to see UNC Chapel Hill continue its transition away from coal. However, we're not solely concerned with ending coal use. This permit modification to test waste pellets as an alternative to coal is not the permanent solution we seek. It's a false solution. A significant concern with this proposal is its potentially damaging impact on the health of our community. How can replacing coal combustion with burning plastic and wood waste pellets, especially those that contain PFAS, be considered a step towards clean air? It would raise the levels of various toxic pollutants. Folks have already shared those, so I won't repeat. This approach just trades one harm with another. Furthermore, this is an environmental justice issue. Northside and Pine Knolls, two historically black neighborhoods, sit less than a mile from the plant. Chapel Hill and Carborough residents deserve better than being treated as experimental subjects for an unscrutinized fuel source. While this permit modification could lead UNC to replace its use of coal, it doesn't restrict UNC's continued use of coal and gas. Methane leaks are quite common and are far more potent at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. Though this transition might end up reducing some greenhouse gas emissions, the scale of the climate crisis calls for eliminating greenhouse gas emissions as fast and equitably as possible. If the university were to burn these pellets, it would perpetuate our reliance on a plant that still operates fossil fuels, ultimately discouraging this much-needed transition to clean, renewable energy sources. Instead of delaying the inevitable, UNC should use its energy and resources to invest in a permanent, forward-thinking solution. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we'd like to see a ditch from fossil fuels to clean and renewable energy. We urge the university to explore more extensive feasibility studies to electrify, rather than putting this energy into a Band-Aid fuel source. It is their responsibility to do so. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The next commenter is Robert Sisick, followed by Tia Hunt.
Hi, I'm Bob Sussex, speaking for myself. I'm a retired toxicologist, and hearing the comments and looking at the table of pollutants on this handout, it's pretty clear that, and the table doesn't have a lot of the pollutants that are likely to come from the wood pellets, by the way. But it's clear that some of the pollutants will go up with the wood pellets and some will go down with the wood pellets relative to coal. But not all pollutants are equally toxic, nor do they have the same toxicology profile. One of the founding principles of toxicology is the dose makes the poison. So my question to you is, has a quantitative risk assessment been performed comparing the pollutant profile from both of these sources of fuel? Can you answer that question? A shake of the head, or this is just a one-way?
One way.
It's one way. Because I think a quantitative risk assessment would better inform your decision than what I understand so far. It appears to be qualitative. And will also potentially allay the concerns that I've heard expressed by many of the people in this room. Which of these two sources are truly safer or more harmful? We can throw out, it has benzene, which is a human carcinogen, the wood pellets, but at what dose? I don't know the answers. And my fear is that you don't know the answer without conducting such a comparative quantitative risk assessment. So that would be my request. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Tia Hunt, followed by Lib Hutchby.
Hi everyone, my name is Tia Hunt, and I'm a student here at UNC and a resident of the town of Chapel Hill. I'm also a citizen of the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina and an organizer with Southern Reactive Service, an indigenous-led environmental justice organization. I'm here to voice opposition to UNC's request to test clean fuel pellets that contain plastic here at the Turner Avenue coal plant. It's irresponsible of UNC to try and use an equally harmful alternative to coal and market it as a win simply because there's a little bit less carbon. The forever chemicals that these pellets contain are genuinely forever, and if this request is approved, the chemicals will seep into our air and into our water. This will harm not only of us those speaking here today, but anyone and any being living in the area or breathing in the area. This includes the people at UNC who drafted this request and the generations that will come after us as well. I understand that the university plans to simply test the use of these chemicals, and by approving the request doesn't guarantee long-term use. But why would we even want to test something that we know will bring harm? If UNC truly cared and listened to community input, then the university would close the coal plant immediately and end its reliance on fossil fuels. There's been long-time protest against UNC's coal plant, not because people are arbitrarily anti-coal, but because we want better for our communities and our environment at large. We are opposed to anything that would induce harm or maintain harm in our surroundings, which these new pellets would do. UNC has the money to listen to us and to do more research. We all know that we have money to do better. So I encourage y'all to deny this permit and move towards cleaner energy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Lib Hutchley, followed by Don Colcia.
Thank you. My name is Lib Hutchley, born and reared in North Carolina, and a resident of Chapel Hill. I'm a mother, grandmother, and I'm determined to live as long as I can, do as much as I can to protect all people in the future. During this historic time of disease, whether it be from COVID-19 or cancer or pneumonia from breathing polluted air, or suffering from the revenge of the insane, we still have responsibilities. DEQ and DAQ, your responsibility to the citizens of North Carolina, as has been said repeatedly, is to protect. How can you protect if you allow the University of North Carolina to continue to produce toxic air pollution? The University of North Carolina Medical Center is a public academic medical center having 950 licensed beds, and is said to be among the top 10 largest hospitals in North Carolina. How do you plan to protect students, faculty, and the patients of UNC Medical Center? How can you protect the neighbors of the cogeneration facility? Please do not allow for modification to UNC's air permit that would allow the burning of wood pellets and or plastic, as we say. Insist that UNC invest in renewable energy as they planned to do back in 2007. Do not permit the burning, please, of wood pellets or plastic. How long will the Division of Air Quality appear to ignore the science that speaks to the health risk of emissions from coal ash, methane, and chemicals that create disease? Which leads me to say that the hypocrisy embedded in this issue is quickly unraveling the future of every student. The idea that burning plastic is needed to keep a hospital electrified is absurd. In fact, it sounds more like a Duke Energy plant of old when coal ash was killing people and Duke built a big center, a cancer center in Durham, where cancer patients go routinely. I think it's terribly hypocritical for the utility infrastructure of UNC to blame their problems on a hospital, when in fact it seems to be the lack of political will to invest in renewable energy for a plan dated in 2007. Wouldn't you think a prestigious university would have been able to invest in newer boilers, renewable energy, and healthy air for themselves and all who enter their campus? Please decide not to grant this permit modification. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Don Colcia, followed by Maya Powell.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Colcia. I live 3 blocks from the plant. More importantly, my grandchildren also live nearby. As far as I'm concerned, the plan to burn pellets is no better than coal. In fact, it is worse. The pellets emit more carbon monoxide, VOCs, PFAS, and lead. The local community has suffered with this pollution long enough. It's time we do better. UNC is a world-renowned institution. It has the knowledge to do better. Let's lead a cleaner, healthier environment to our children and grandchildren, not one that increases harmful pollutants unhealthy pollutants such as PFAS, carbon monoxide, VOCs, and lead. Please reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Maya Pell, followed by Samuel Scarborough.
Hello, my name is Maya Powell. I'm a Carrboro resident and ecology and climate change researcher and activist at UNC. I'm here to oppose UNC's permit to combust waste pellets as a fuel source. This proposal is being framed as a step forward for sustainability, but in reality, it is a false solution that perpetuates existing problems. First, let's be clear. Burning waste pellets is not clean or renewable energy. The EPA has repeatedly demonstrated that burning these alternative fuels can be even worse than coal for some emissions. And UNC's own application shows that this process will increase emissions of NOx, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds, as mentioned by many others. Yet, critical testing for VOCs and other toxins has been so far insufficient. Additionally, UNC has referenced dry scrubbers as part of the proposed emissions control system. However, dry scrubbers are not optimized for removing VOCs or other hazardous pollutants like dioxins or heavy metals. In order to perform a true analysis of the environmental and health impacts, testing and continuous sampling of PAHs, dioxins and furans alongside PFAs, and even PCBs during combustion and in the waste product is also necessary. By pursuing this project, UNC is gambling with public health, particularly for historically marginalized communities surrounding the power plant, who will bear the brunt of this pollution. Second, this plan falsely claims to reduce landfill waste. Let's call it what it is, burning trash in our backyards under the guise of sustainability. Waste pellets are not a low-carbon alternative. They include up to 49% plastic, as mentioned before, and the life cycle analysis used to justify their use ignores the carbon emissions from burning the paper portion of these pellets and downplays the additional environmental cost of transportation or the creation of a new production facility. While I'm excited that UNC is actively recognizing that the coal they currently burn is a climate and health disaster, this is simply trading one harmful practice for another, and these pellets are not the solution. This is a short-term band-aid to replace coal in an attempt to meet their 2040 carbon neutrality date without addressing the root cause of the problem. Additionally, this perpetuates their use of the fossil fuel burning power plant on Cameron Avenue. Real solutions do exist for UNC, such as investing in renewable energy sources like geothermal and solar technologies paired with battery storage that can genuinely lead us toward a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Samuel Scarborough, followed by Lars Dromit.
Good evening. My name is Samuel Scarborough. I am born and raised in Durham, but now a student at UNC Chapel Hill, second year. I work with Transparency, the Carolina NAACP, the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign Coordinating Committee, Student Leadership Group with the Jackson Center, and I previously served as co-lead of the Durham Climate Justice Initiative. And I urge this body, the DAQ, to reject UNC's application for this new pellet fuel source. When thinking about this proposed plan, I think one of the first things is thinking about the facility as it stands itself. As many of the previous speakers have outlined clearly, there are concerns with the use of coal and its impact on surrounding communities. And I think it's very poetic in a sense, looking at the name of this facility. This is the Cameron Avenue Cogeneration Plant, named after a plantation-owning family that enslaved black people. And now we're talking about today a facility that's not only contributing to environmental injustice issues with coal, but now with this new application and the follow-up effects that we're seeing from the PFAS concerns. But I think another thing to consider with this is thinking about the urgency of now. We are seeing across this country, across this world, the ramifications of climate change. And we need to have an approach that doesn't center a pursuit of renewable energy blindly, but a pursuit of justice that is underlined by sustainability. That's what our foremost concern should be. Environmental justice, which is underlined by using sustainable renewable energies. But in this case, not the wood plastic, the wood pellets and the burning of plastic. And then the final thing I want to say is I encourage everyone here to read a book called In the Shadow of the Ivory Tower by Devarian Baldwin. It does a good look at looking at the role that universities play in impacting the communities that surround them. And I think in this moment, when we're talking about this proposed plan, it's important to not only look at the environmental ramifications of universities' impacts on surrounding communities, but all other areas in which the university impacts the communities that they inhabit. So that's all I have to say for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter is Lars Perlmutt, followed by Ivara Golden.
Good evening. My name is Lars Perlmutt, and I'm a downtown Chapel Hill native. I have a PhD from New York University and MSPH from UNC Chapel Hill in environmental health sciences, and have been directly involved in air pollution, health research, and policy for over 15 years. I work as a health scientist at the Environmental Protection Agency, but tonight I'm speaking in my personal capacity, and the views that I express are my own and not those of the EPA or the federal government, but rather as a private citizen. UNC has requested an update to their Title V permit in order to burn engineered pellets which contain PFAS. NCDEQ should deny this permit. This comment and concern is not about decreases in emissions of PM2.5 or SO2, though increased emissions of NO2 and VOCs are a concern for the formation of increased concentrations of ozone. This comment is related to the health effects of PFAS and how little we know. While DAQ states that the facility's emissions of other national ambient air quality, of other toxic materials would not cause an exceedance of any acceptable ambient level of PM2.5 or other national ambient air quality standards, currently no ambient air standards exist for PFAS. In fact, NCDEQ has even petitioned EPA to have PFAS classified as a hazardous air pollutant in order to tackle a critical part of the PFAS life cycle, air emissions. PFAS are forever chemicals. Health effects from exposure to PFAS include developmental effects or delays in children, an increased risk of some cancers, and reproductive effects. However, research is still ongoing to determine how different levels of exposure to different PFAS can lead to a variety of health effects, especially in children. So what will the impact on our community be when we are exposed to PFAS in the ambient air? The answer is we do not know, and that is not just scary, but grossly irresponsible. While NCDEQ will require monitoring of PFAS in the ambient air, the reality is methods are still being developed to better monitor PFAS in the air. So to conclude, there's no such thing as a small amount of PFAS, as there is no known threshold below which PFAS do not elicit health effects. Without the ability to scientifically and objectively evaluate the health risks associated with exposure to emitted PFAS in the ambient air, as well as its impact on drinking water systems, I urge NCDAQ to deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ivara Golden, followed by Margot Francini.
Hi, I'm Ivara Golden. I'm a Carver resident and an ecologist at UNC, and I'm here to urge DAQ to deny this permit modification. I wanted to start by making a comparison to Copenhagen, where I toured their cogeneration plant that powers most of the city and provides energy and heat in Copenhagen. It's a very extensive facility, and while they burn trash there, they also have far more air filters and scrubbers and a lot more dedication of both money and filters in order to ensure that the air quality from their burning of trash does not present a risk to the city of Copenhagen. Here in Chapel Hill, we don't have similar levels of air filter technology, while we have some, and I think that it would be wrong to burn PFAS without similar levels of filters. I was also surprised to read more about these pellets and find out that they would increase airborne PFAS when OWASA, the water quality around here and water facility, will soon be spending millions on a new facility to remove PFAS from drinking water. I think it's in kind of opposition of the millions of dollars that the towns around here will soon be spending to remove PFAS from water, to then go ahead and put more of these scrubber chemicals into the air, where they will then likely end up in our drinking water as well as in lungs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Margaret Francini, followed by Carissa Grasti.
Hi, my name is Margaret Francini, and I'm an undergraduate student at UNC who also grew up in the area. As a student researcher, I studied presence of PFAS, compounds that disproportionately impact our home state of North Carolina, in the air. These compounds are known to enter the air as incomplete combustion byproducts and return to the ground through deposition, either through rain or just settled particulates, contaminating soil, surface water, and groundwater. Despite these risks, the PFAS composition of the proposed pelletized fuel was only analyzed once in 2019, according to the information presented in the application. Since 2019, advancements in PFAS detection and analysis have revealed more compounds in various environmental media at previously undetectable levels. For example, HFPODA, or GenX, was labeled as non-detect in Convergent's 2019 analysis. However, GenX has been found in North Carolina's air and is commonly found in consumer products. In my preliminary research at UNC, I've identified GenX along with 25 other PFAS compounds at detectable levels in indoor air, demonstrating how pervasive these chemicals are in our environment and diverse environmental media due to consumer product manufacturing and associated industries. Additionally, there has been no mention of any sort of plume modeling study to assess where PFAS emissions could travel and deposit in our community, or any projection of what ambient concentrations might result. Acquiring this information is critical to understanding whether emissions would increase PFAS air concentrations beyond background levels, or further burden Chapel Hill's water supplies, which are already in exceedance for a few PFAS standards under the Safe Drinking Water Act, effective in 2 years. Finally, filtration systems at the plant must be evaluated to determine their ability to remove both particulate and gas-phase PFAS. Once PFAS are released in the environment, we know that they persist indefinitely and they accumulate over time. As such, the yearly emission rate of 1.2 pounds per year presented is not only a lower bound at best, but it is also not entirely representative of PFAS's particular environmental burden, as emissions are essentially tacked on each year, building up in our community. Because of the complexity of the PFAS issue, I personally do not think it is wise that a university should touch a fuel that contains them. I urge the department to require updated, comprehensive testing of the proposed fuel over time, including total organic fluorine content analysis, emission studies, and modeling of environmental impacts in our community. This is essential to ensure that the university's necessary transition away from coal is both sustainable and protective of public health. Thank you.
Thanks. The next commenter is Carissa Grasti, followed by Kristen Cohen. Carissa Grasti?
Pass.
Oh, okay. Then Kristen Cohen, followed by Joshua Miller. And if I said it incorrectly, I apologize.
That's okay. I'm Kristen Cowan. I'm an environmental epidemiologist, and I'm currently a PhD candidate at UNC Chapel Hill in the Department of Epidemiology, and I live in Carborough, and I travel past the coal plant most days on my way to campus. I'm also a proud member of the No Coal UNC Coalition, so I'd like to echo the comments that they already made. In my research, I've led numerous papers studying the impacts of air pollution on health. I'm concerned by the proposed permanent modification to use these pellets made from what the website calls hard to recycle items. I'm excited to see a transition away from burning coal, which will bring down our overall emissions and will reduce overall particulate matter in the air of Chapel Hill. Burning these energy pellets will increase other types of emissions, though, from the plant, including increases in VOCs, which other people have done a much better job talking about, so I won't go into that, as well as PFAS. And there are two important elements of the proposed permit modification that I think are really important to touch on, and that's the location where this will occur. First of all, this is an environmental justice issue, with the burning being situated near two historically black neighborhoods within just 1 mile of the plant. This is a harm that has persisted with the coal plant due to the acceptance of environmental racism in our community.
And by bringing in a new understudied fuel source that we don't even know what all it's made up of to burn in that area, we are only perpetuating the issue further. Second, the plant is located right near the Livicotten Bikeway and Cameron Avenue, where many people exercise and ride their bikes to campus every day. Due to increased inhalation rates during exercise like running and biking and walking to campus, a number of epidemiology studies have found that there are increased blood levels of air pollutions among people who exercise near source pollutants. So this is not only burning in the middle of nowhere, but near where a lot of people will be inhaling the pollutants regularly. For these reasons, I believe that not enough research has been done on the emissions that would be made from burning these pellets, and I definitely don't think that the measurements that are being proposed in this current modification would be sufficient for assessing the emissions from this source. And it also seems to vary a lot in the consistency of its byproducts. This permit modification will continue our reliance on operating a plant that produces harmful emissions in an environmental justice community and an area that impacts the greater Chapel Hill community. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next commenter is Joshua Miller, followed by Jay Tiemann.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm a local resident and water researcher at UNC. I'm here because UNC's plan to burn these waste pellets pose serious health risks, both known and yet to be quantified, to the workers at the cogeneration facility and the broader community. Switching from coal might yield slight reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, as others have noted, but these reductions are negligible at best. While any progress towards carbon neutrality might seem worth celebrating, especially in light of UNC's glacial progress towards its sustainability commitments, this shift comes at a significant cost to local health. Burning these pellets would drastically increase, as we all know, emissions of harmful pollutants, including nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds. These compounds are known to irritate the respiratory system and cause long-term damage to liver, kidneys, and nervous systems. And as stated by many others, the pellets also contain PFAS, chemicals linked to hormone disruption, developmental issues in children, and increased risks of cancer. These are not hypothetical risks. They're becoming ever well documented, and even low levels of exposure are known to have long-lasting harmful effects. I'm equally concerned about the waste generated by burning these pellets. I understand that this proposal is looking at the air quality. But what's in this byproduct and how will it be managed? Will it be dumped locally, jeopardizing our water supply, or will it be shipped elsewhere, continuing the harmful pattern we've seen with coal ash, where other communities bear the consequences of UNC's waste? Approving this permit would send a troubling message that the ability of UNC to maintain the status quo is prioritized over the health of the local community. UNC has a choice. They can invest in real sustainable energy solutions that don't harm the people and places they're responsible for protecting, or they can continue proposing stopgap measures that deepen local health inequities and contribute to the climate crisis. As a student and member of this community, I'm asking them to do better. As a public institution, UNC has a duty to promote the well-being of the people it serves. This proposal stands in direct opposition to that responsibility. For these reasons, I urge you to reject this proposal or just for UNC to withdraw altogether. Thank you.
Thank you. The next commenter is Jay Tiemann. Tiemann, thanks. Followed by Thomas Hinkle.
Thank you. My name is Jay Tiemann. I grew up in Chapel Hill and I'm currently getting a master's in social work at UNC. And as somebody studying the soft sciences, I'm very grateful to be following the many experienced community members who do a better argument against this permit based on the hard sciences. And in addition to echoing all the previously stated concerns about the unknown risks of burning these plastic pellets, I have concerns about the permit allowing UNC to measure its own emissions and reporting accurately to DAQ. I attended Scarborough High School, which isn't far from the coal plant, from 2013 and 2017. And in a short time period, UNC was the center of multiple scandals, including being found to have committed academic fraud for 18 years, ironically with their paper classes, and now they're burning paper pellets. Mishandling Title IX complaints for at least 5 years, and attempting to slide multi-million-dollar payments under the rug to literal neo-Confederates. And as others mentioned, this is an issue of environmental racism and environmental justice. And I also don't really believe that we would actually be offsetting the carbon emissions when you factor in the transportation needed to get these pellets from Wisconsin to North Carolina. And while the corporations who make these waste products say it's landfill diversion, I reject the idea that diverting it into our air, water, and the lungs of our community members is a viable alternative to the ground. And also in the permit, in the opening statement, it was mentioned that this is the greatest possible change for the plant that's been proposed, but I say that the greatest possible change is actually moving towards decarbonization and not doing these step downs that have unknown, very harmful long-term effects. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Hinkle is the next speaker, followed by Ardavista Carlin.
Good evening. I'm Tom Henkel, a retired professor of physics, past chair of the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Board for the town of Chapel Hill, and a longtime solar energy professional. In fact, I helped the university install their first solar energy system on top of Morrison Dorm. We all know that the university has been seeking ways to replace the coal in burning in the Cameron Avenue cogen plant with a low carbon fuel for many years without success. And this new fuel is the latest they are interested in trying. If the main purpose of the cogeneration plant were to only produce electric power, it could be closed tomorrow, and the university could purchase all of its power from Duke Energy. But the primary purpose of this plant is to provide the UNC campus with low-pressure steam, so that the main problem for the university is how it will continue to supply the campus with non-fossil fuel produced LP steam. In my research for such a solution, I have found that so-called high-temperature electric heat pumps are now available to produce the necessary high-temperature heat to produce low-pressure steam of a temperature of about 122 degrees centigrade. Siemens Energy is one such company which produces these units. These heat pumps have good coefficients of performance, much greater than the 1.0 COP for resistance electric heating. It is my understanding that Princeton University is now installing such electric heat pumps to provide high temperature heat for its campus-wide district hot water system, so that their coal-fired plant can be closed. Any electric heat pump moves heat from a low temperature source to a high temperature output, and the Princeton heat pumps require vertical geothermal boreholes to provide the low temperature input heat. UNC owns enough land near the main campus where it might be possible to drill the necessary boreholes to provide the geothermal energy for these new high temperature heat pumps to produce the required amount of low pressure steam, so that the Cameron Avenue cogen plant can be closed. So I recommend that UNC's application to burn the paper and plastic pellets be denied, and that the university be encouraged to consider installing electric high-temperature heat pumps to provide the needed LP steam. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter is Ardavista Carlin, followed by Jessica Bush.
Good evening. My name is Ardavista Carlin. I'm a climate and environmental justice activist here with Sunrise UNC tonight to speak against the DAQ granting the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill an air quality permit to burn wood, paper, plastic pellets, and PFAS to continue perpetuating environmental injustice across Chapel Hill. It's 2025 and UNC Chapel Hill still owns and operates a toxic cogeneration plant near and affecting Chapel Hill's two historically black neighborhoods, just half a mile by the edge of the university's campus. In 2010, UNC falsely promised that by 2020 they would shut this detrimental coal plants down, but the environmental justice impacts of the university's toxic air pollution remain. Continuing this false promise, UNC now wants an air quality permit to burn plastic and PFAS, carcinogenic, cancer-causing chemicals, into the earth we walk on, the air we breathe, and the very water we drink, in a case of environmental racism. The burning of these toxic PFAS would disproportionately impact Chapel Hill's historically black neighborhoods, with detrimental health effects in unquantifiable amounts. Instead of burning pellets with PFAS, which by the way would have a marginal effect on climate warming greenhouse gas pollution compared to coal or natural gas, UNC must, in the long term, electrify and do what's necessary to transition away from fossil fuels and all toxicity. Burning wood waste and plastic pellets is not the solution to a just transition. It's just more and more and more pollution. Whether it's coal, natural gas, or PFAS, toxicity is never the answer, and we reject the burning of PFAS. We're seeing the horrifically devastating effects of climate change today. From the wildfires still raging in LA to the destruction brought to Western North Carolina by Hurricane Helene, this is a climate emergency. We need to transition away from fossil fuels, but we don't need any more false solutions. Instead, we must insist and demand that UNC transition to renewables and ensure we create a just and livable future that is truly just, not just sacrificing our water, air, and health of our communities for dangerous false solutions. PFAS, forever chemicals, are not the solution, but maintaining the health and safety of the Chapel Hill community is forever. Reject PFAS, reject the proposal, and demand UNC begin a just transition to renewables like geothermal and solar, with environmental justice always in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next commenter, Jessica Bush, followed by Robert Mercadante.
Thank you. My name is Jess Bush. I'm an environmental and climate professional. I work for the Environmental Defense Fund, but I'm here tonight on behalf of myself, speaking as a Carrboro resident and a concerned citizen, and all of these viewpoints are my own. PFAS are only a small group of the type of harmful chemicals that will be emitted into the atmosphere through this proposed burning of plastic waste. Other hazardous air pollutants, many of which would be newly introduced specifically because of burning plastic, will be released from the incineration and breakdown of the plastics themselves, as well as from the various pigments, plasticizers, stabilizers, and flame retardants used in plastic formation. For example, this facility is expected to release over 10 tons of hazardous air pollutants every single year, including over 22,000 pounds per year of acrolein, over 23,000 pounds of benzene, and nearly 25,000 pounds of formaldehyde. Many of these chemicals and many more that are expected to be released are known to cause cancer and contribute to other health impacts, such as respiratory effects, neurological effects, reproductive and developmental harms, and decreased ability to fight infections. The current data in UNC's proposal lacks insight into the real-world exposures that our communities will experience, such as the emissions rates or actual exposure concentrations, which are necessary for proper modeling to be done to understand the true health risks of this process. Further, the permit fails to consider the additive and cumulative risks from exposure to a multitude of chemicals that will be released from this facility that cause the same health impacts. Many studies have shown that the approach of considering the health impacts from each chemical one by one underestimates the true health risks to communities exposed to multiple contaminants, especially because model data often underestimates true exposure values. These and many other toxics that UNC is proposing to release create a new suite of health impacts, compounding health risks on any communities within at least 6 miles of the plant, with the main brunt of this burden being on specifically historically black neighborhoods. However, the analysis within the permit doesn't take into account the multitudes of releases of harmful chemicals that can come from burning plastic, largely because the source and makeup of each pellet that contains plastic waste isn't included. The analysis in the permit assumed burning wood pellets without considering the plastic content, or it only used data provided by Convergyn, which doesn't disclose what types of plastics are in the pellets or account for the fact that Convergyn sources plastics from over 100 varying sources. When coal is burned, it releases nitrous oxides and particulate matter along with carbon dioxide and other chemicals that cause harmful respiratory and cardiovascular impacts. However, these pollutants are also expected to be emitted in this new process. So not only are our communities continuing to struggle with the respiratory and cardiovascular complications, we will have new detrimental health risks from the added burning of plastics, such as birth defects, higher cancer rates, reproductive system damages, harm to pregnant women, and neurological problems. Please do not let them greenwash this decision or convince you that this is a transition to a sustainable alternative fuel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter is Mercadante, followed by Evan Wiles.
Hi, I'm Bobby Mercadante. I've lived in Chapel Hill my whole life. I work in Scarborough. I live on Merrill Mill Road. I can see the cogeneration facility from my apartment window. And I want to state that I do not consent to being poisoned by UNC. The time to stop burning fossil fuels was 20 years ago. I don't want a 10% reduction. I don't want a 20% reduction. I want it to end. This is insane. This is insane that we're talking about this. We need to be talking about shutting it down. People need to be ready to organize, to protest, and to physically block the delivery of these fuels to this facility. It's crazy. They've been poisoning us since they started burning coal there, and they're not going to stop voluntarily. We have to force them to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next commenter is Evan Paces-Wiles, followed by Wendy Machines.
I'm Evan Paces-Wiles. I'm here as a student at UNC and a member of Sunrise at UNC. And I'm here as a student at UNC and a member of Sunrise at UNC. We are opposed to these pellets being allowed for burning at the cogeneration plant. The increased VOCs and other pollutants, as well as the PFAS that are going to be emitted because of these pellets, have extremely detrimental effects, as has been laid out by numerous other speakers. UNC claims this is an ultra-low carbon fuel. That's not true. It's a very minor decrease in carbon emissions, even by their own numbers. They also claim that all of these plastics would otherwise end up in landfills. Also not true. A lifetime analysis commissioned by Cogen Energy determined plastic recycling was an alternative that would have far lower emissions. This is at best a stopgap measure and at worst greenwashing that's going to allow long-term resources to be diverted away from actual solutions that will help students at UNC and help the greater Chapel Hill community, and is not what's best for anybody in the surrounding area. UNC is just pursuing the cheapest and easiest option that makes us sick, instead of real, clean, and sustainable energy and shutting down the plant, which is essential.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Wendy, followed by Christy Mather.
Am I loud? Yes, okay. My name is Wendy Missioner. I represent only myself. And I have two separate things. One of them is about the stuff itself. The other is to speak to the people who will make this decision. That I ask you to remember that you matter, that your dignity, your honor matter, and do not let yourself set it aside, because there will be pressure on you. I totally get that you are not acting alone and that you are not free to act in the best interest of your grandchildren. But that's what I'm asking you to do. To remember that you Whatever power you have, please use it. Please use it for those who will come after us, who will have to endure the results of what we decide, of what we do. We've all seen what happened in LA. That was not an accident. That was a natural consequence of our behavior. And it will only get worse if we don't take it seriously. As far as the thing itself, you may find that you are not allowed to deny this. I would suggest that you make it a condition that UNC will be completely liable for any effects of burning this fuel on the people around them. Just write it in there, that they are the ones who will pay for the cancers, for the mutilated children, whatever comes from this. And also that you have an opportunity to do some serious research. Everybody keeps saying we don't know what's going to happen with this stuff. We don't know what the effect is. You can order that this will become a research project, that this will be where we discover what the effect is. And UNC will pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Christy Mather, followed by Kate Sawyer.
Hi, I'm Christy Mather, and I live and breathe in Chapel Hill. Allowing UNC's cogeneration plant to burn paper and plastic pellets is not a step towards modern and sustainable energy generation. It's kicking the can down the road, and we can't afford to do that. We're in a climate crisis. I agree with the many other speakers. Using these pellets is trading some pollutions for others, including hazardous compounds with alarming health impacts, and you've heard others talk about what those are, the extent of which we can't fully predict, for small reductions in carbon dioxide emissions. Adding pellets as another thing to burn in the cogen plant, especially when cloaked in claims of increased sustainability, will almost definitely increase the lifespan of a polluting facility in a densely populated area near to historically black neighborhoods. Many other speakers have reminded you that this is also an environmental justice issue. Keeping the plant operating longer with slightly reduced CO2 emissions will overall generate more CO2 emissions than accepting our responsibility and focusing on replacing the energy generated from the plant with non-carbon derived sources. Burning these plastic and paper pellets, which are made from packing material, also allows us to ignore another serious environmental problem, rapidly growing volumes of trash. Packing materials are proportionally a larger and larger amount of that trash. Patting ourselves on the back for burning it as a way to reduce the amount that ends up in a landfill is greenwashing and distracts us from the real solution. We need to use less packing material. Just because others are using these pellets, including universities, doesn't make it a good idea. Some speakers have asked for more studies of the details of exactly how much each of these pollutants would be produced. Frankly, burning stuff to get our energy is just a lousy idea. Please reject the proposed permit modifications, take burning a different fuel source off the table, and let's put those resources into actually clean, modern, sustainable sources of energy and close the cogen plant entirely. Thank you also for moving the hearing to Chapel Hill from Hillsborough.
Thank you. Great. Next speaker, Kate Sayer, followed by Anne Froment.
Good evening. My name is Kate Sayer, and in no way am I an expert on air quality. But living 4 houses from the plant, a mom of 2 young boys, a UNC public health grad, and a daughter of an environmental consultant, I'm quite alarmed to say the least. While I've heard we don't know enough about PFAS, a few times there is history that can serve as precedent. We didn't know much about lead, asbestos, cigarettes, coal ash, etc., until it was too late and expensive to remediate. Estimated costs are between 2.7 and 18 million per pound to remove and destroy PFAS from municipal wastewater. We're talking about this amount every year. I consulted some folks at Duke, as UNC's been pretty quiet, who research topics related to PFAS, and they are linked to a host of severe health issues, including increased risk of cancer, developmental problems in children, and hormonal disruptions. These substances persist in the environment and bioaccumulate in the human body, meaning even low levels of exposure can have devastating long-term effects. The argument that PFAS levels are too low to cause harm is fundamentally flawed. Research shows that chronic low-dose exposure accumulates in the body over time, leading to significant health risks. As they are measured in parts per trillion, 1.2 pounds annually, compounding over time, is a lot. And this doesn't take into account that we have not come to a consensus on how to measure PFAS in the air. Additionally, the claim that regulating PFAS will harm the economy ignores the broader economic and social costs of inaction, escalating healthcare expenses, and losing public trust in environmental stewardship. Why are we settling for maybe this is better, but could very possibly be worse, when we could be advocating for the university to fully move away from fossil fuels? I am asking that you reject this permit and hold UNC accountable for respecting the community. We are not the university's guinea pigs. Recent national measures, such as the EPA's enforceable drinking water standards and bans on specific PFAS uses, demonstrate the feasibility and urgency of regulatory action. UNC can take a stand against harmful practices like burning PFAS-containing materials and instead champion innovative, forward-thinking solutions that prioritize public health and environmental integrity. We have the #1 public health school in the country, as we like to say, so let's use the smarts and make a difference.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Anne Frummett, followed by Camille Berry.
Hi, I'm Anne Frummett. I'm representing myself. I'm an employee of UNC, and I live in Cargo, and I bike along the cogeneration plant every day, and I breathe its air every day. In cold weather, when there's a thermal inversion in Cargo, I breathe and I smell the power plant emission. I'm originally from Brussels, as the accent might give you some hinting about the way, whatever. But we have in Brussels a town incinerator for our waste, and it's producing dioxin. So when I heard burning waste, I wasn't that happy about it, which is why I'm coming. And I wasn't sure about the use of waste pellets. And now that I've heard all the other speakers, that's it. I'm totally sure that it's not a good idea, and I'm just scratching all my other paragraphs and asking you to deny the permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Camille Berry, followed by David Anise.
Good evening. I'm Camille Berry. I am a member of the town council here in Chapel Hill, but I'm speaking for myself. I also am sharing words from a neighbor who lives just 100 yards from the cogen plant. Ian Morse and his partner live on South Merritt Mill Road, and their backyard, as I said, is approximately 100 yards from the plant. Number one, North Carolina communities and organizations like OWASA are spending millions to clean up PFAS and similar chemicals. It is self-defeating to add more PFAS to the environment. Number two, we don't know how the various components of the pellets might be altered upon incineration. The composition of the pellets themselves can vary. Number three, approving the one-year trial is tantamount to approving the use of pellets indefinitely. Number four, the cogen plant creates 20,000 tons of coal ash annually. In response to environmental injustice and a climate crisis, we owe it to ourselves to course correct by installing existing and widely available non-polluting energy sources. The university should lead in this regard instead of putting forward feckless half measures. And number 5, the town council and mayor, past and present, have done a lot to establish that Chapel Hill is more than just the location of the university. However, approving the use of these pellets or continuing to burn gas or toxic coal will belie that effort and show that the university has more impact in the lives of citizens than our elected government, down to the air we breathe. Now, for my words, something that I draw upon in my Quaker experience, believe that the truth is continually revealed. We know more today than we did yesterday about PFAS. One thing that I do know is it's very difficult to pronounce, and that's why we use the acronym. Thank you. One of the things that I was told when I got to choose what I ate was choose the simple ingredients. Don't choose the ones that you can't pronounce, right? Those are the dangerous ones. Can't pronounce PFAS, what it actually stands for. What keeps showing up in my feed, and I think that my phone is listening to me, is snippets from the Aaron Brockovich movie. I think that's timely. Do we want to breathe that air, each of us? Do we want to stand there in the backyard of my friends and breathe that air with those pellets burning? Don't think so. And I also worry about the water, where those will fall, not far away, into our system. And the last thing is, I want to say thank you very much for relocating this meeting to the community where the plant exists. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is David Annis, followed by Susanna Tuttle.
Hi, I'm David Annis. I'm here representing only myself. I have a couple of comments. One is that a number of the speakers have called for us doing better job estimating what the health impacts will be from the PFAS. And they've said we need to do toxicology studies, we need to do analysis of where the plume will go. We need to understand how much will settle out into the water system and how much of that can be removed. I think it's impossible to do. PFAS is not a single chemical. PFAS is a family of chemicals. There are many, many chemicals in the PFAS family, and many of them have not been studied. The ones that have been studied, safe levels, haven't been determined. The specific composition of the PFAS chemicals can be different based on the difference in the pellets, based on what the manufacturers send to the pellet producing place. So there's no good way of even estimating what the toxic effects are going to be. As recently as last month, December, the U.S. Census Bureau published a paper which was written by professors from 3 universities, including one from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, about the long-term effects of PFAS exposure during early childhood. And what they found is that PFAS exposure during early childhood reduces lifetime earnings, reduces things from birth weight to graduation rates. So there's all sorts of effects from PFAS exposure that are just being discovered now, and we don't know at what levels that exposure matters, and we don't know to what specific PFAS ones. Some PFAS chemicals may have more effect than others. So I urge you to reject this, because we don't need toxins with unknown and variable effects being pumped into the air and water. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Susanna Tuttle, followed by Amy Okonkwo.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak at this public input hearing. My name is Susanna Tuttle, and I have been a resident of Chapel Hill since 2001. After graduating from seminary in 2004, I was hired as UNC Chapel Hill's very first Sustainability Research Associate and worked for 2.5 years as a staff member of the Campus Sustainability Office as part of UNC's Facility Services Department. I want to highlight the year of 2004 because it was over 20 years ago that I participated as a staff member in UNC's Energy Services Campus considerations on how to most efficiently transition the cogeneration plant off coal relative to the issues of climate change and polluting fuel sources, impacts on the environment, and impacts on public health and well-being. It must be no surprise to anyone in this hearing that I am both shocked and saddened that although UNC is finally, decades later, proposing a pathway to transition away from coal that risks doing significant harm. Burning a pellet made from pre-consumer industrial paper and plastic waste products should not be considered an acceptable fuel source alternative, and it certainly should not fit into a climate action plan designed for the 21st century. I speak tonight not only as a permanent resident of Chapel Hill, but as the statewide director of Interfaith Power and Light, known as NCIPL, which is North Carolina operates as an eco-justice connection initiative of the North Carolina Council of Churches. NCIPL core programs promote a variety of solutions to mitigate future climate change, including energy efficiency and conservation, increased renewable energy use, and collective low-carbon lifestyle changes. I'm extremely proud of the multiple communities of faith surrounding the UNC campus that are serving as models of sustainability by investing in solar energy to power their facilities as a moral imperative. As a professional in this field, my primary commitment is to protect the people and places that we love. And I am especially interested in how this project's draft permit and related documents have raised significant concerns, as stated tonight and in the reports, including the sufficiency of UNC and DEQ's analysis of the waste pellets and their potential impact to local air quality and surrounding communities. The technical experts are sharing points concerning unknown composition and emissions from waste pellets and why waste pellets cannot be considered wood for purposes of avoiding scrutiny. So I just will reiterate the human health concerns and moral obligations of environmental justice principles that my beloved town of Chapel Hill and former employee UNC must protect. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Amy Okonkwo, followed by Jennifer Redmond.
Hello everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am Amy Okonkwo, and I'm the organizing director of Sunrise Movement at UNC. So everyone in this room here has heard the statistics, the community concerns, the worries that people have shared here. We have heard about the health impacts of this cogeneration plant alone on communities in close proximity. We know about South Boston, Virginia, the 55.6% Black town where this plant is currently disposing its waste. So rightfully so, we do not trust that this energy plant will ethically or sustainably care for communities in a transition to pellets. In fact, the decision to move to pellets is representative of the neglect and lack of environmentally consciousness that this coal plant has, with the burning of pellets producing only 12% less carbon than coal. Quite frankly, it is a lazy attempt to take steps to a sustainable future and to hear our calls for action. There is so much more that we can do for your sake and for mine. The passing of this permit, as written, is disrespectful to communities whom UNC and Chapel Hill as a town has affected through its operation of this coal plant. It is disrespectful to the indigenous populations whose land we stand on. It is disrespectful to Black and brown and low-income communities all across our state, our country, and our globe, communities like my family's village in Nigeria, who continue to be disproportionately affected at the hands of institutions like this coal plant. that is carelessly contributing to the climate crisis. This permit will only exacerbate the problem at hand. Whether the moral call against the use of pellets resonates with you or not, the fact of the matter is that people are dying, and this plant, UNC, and Chapel Hill, you all have the means to determine how many more people are victims of this energy plant. As we speak, in the West, California is on fire. Do not be the reason Chapel Hill and other communities across our country, across our planet, will be found ablaze. I urge you to reject this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Jennifer Hopnick-Redmond.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Hopnick-Redmond, and I'm the Senior Director of the Environmental Health and Water Quality Program at RTI International, where I led research with the Consumer Product Safety Commission on sources of PFAS and worked with EPA on PFAS once they get into our environment. I'm here today as a Chapel Hill resident. With federal limits of 0.04 parts per trillion for specific PFAS in water, 1.2 pounds of PFAS emitted annually, equivalent to what is noted in the current plan, could contaminate 14 trillion liters of water. That's about 6 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. This estimate is based on a single PFAS MCL in water and a single pellet analyzed. But there are over 16,000 PFAS chemicals and about 3 billion pounds of PFAS are manufactured annually in the US, mostly for inclusion in most products that you see that say they are water, stain, and oil repellent. This includes thousands of patented paper-based products. Since there are no labeling requirements, there may be significant variability in PFAS being put into the pellets, which means the current proposal may drastically underestimate the PFAS emissions that are actually occurring. We are already exposed to PFAS in our water supplies, foods, and consumer products every day, and pellet usage would create air emissions and down gradient impacts that expose Chapel Hill residents, especially those in underserved areas and students, to additional health risks. This is a short-sighted plan at the cost of public health that doesn't address the long-term need for sustainable and safe energy generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Talia Wilson, followed by Philip Davis.
Hello, my name is Talia Wilson. I'm a student at UNC and I am the campaigns coordinator for Sunrise UNC. My hometown was hit by Hurricane Helene. It destroyed people's lives and they knew it. I know that in Western North Carolina, our thoughts are with the LA fire victims who have lost their homes, their livelihoods, the world that they know it. The climate crisis is here, and UNC is responsible for contributing to it. In 2010, UNC said it would be coal-free by 2020. They did not meet this goal, and later said they would look into switching away from coal with no timeline set in place. UNC is now looking at pellets as a fuel source, when I think many of us fear will be an excuse to delay further action. These pellets will increase nitrogen oxide emissions, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds will only be a 12% decrease in carbon dioxide emissions overall. The plastic in the pellets will also release large amounts of PFAS chemicals. These pollutants pose a large threat to human and environmental health. And guess where all these pollutants are being released into? Predominantly black neighborhoods and other residential areas that surround the plant. These communities will be disproportionately burdened by these health impacts, communities which have historically felt the brunt of climate justice issues. It is time for UNC to take responsibility and make an effort to prevent further harm to these communities. This solution is far from a catch-all. Yes, it is an alternative to coal, but reduction in greenhouse gas emissions are not that much better and a sacrifice to human health. More research must be done on the harm of these pellets, and we must strive for a better solution. If you choose to implement the pellets, let this be a step toward moving away from fossil fuels and not the end. Carolina must take up responsibility as a public university and serve the public. This means moving away from coal and other fossil fuels to ensure a livable future, but also researching and investing in energy sources that are not a risk to human and environmental health. UNC must lead the way in demonstrating what a true commitment to climate justice looks like. The time for half measures is over. Anything less than bold, transformative action is a betrayal to its promise to the students and public which UNC strives to serve, and the livelihood of future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Philip Davis, followed by Emily Sutton.
Hi, I'm Philip Davis. I live right across the street from the plant, if you ever want to drop by. I'm not willing to wait for UNC or Convergent to discover that they've irreversibly poisoned me, especially since the former obviously has an interest in not backtracking on a complicated and presumably cost-cutting energy transition. And the latter CFO reassures us that, quote, incineration will destroy PFAS, which contradicts reports from the Air Force, as well as history from similar facilities in the Netherlands and Convergent's own facilities. Frankly, I don't trust the reports of a company willing to make obviously false statements to our face. Never mind that these pellets would turn my jogging route into the 6th largest source of acrolein in the state of North Carolina. Every year, researchers discover new and pervasive sources of PFAS in our plastics and our environment. So it's completely insulting to claim that industrial quantities of such plastics from random trash could reliably be kept safe. Like if someone rolled your trash into a cigarette, would you smoke it? In short, the university's insistence on untestable and dangerous responses to the climate crisis, as opposed to well-known renewable sources like wind or solar, especially 5 years after their failure to make good on a promise to transition away from fossil fuels. As a university that prides itself on research and innovation, this is a simply shameful state of affairs. The world is speeding towards and likely well past several climate tipping points, and this silly pellet plan demonstrates that the university is happily asleep at the wheel, and if you vote for it, or if you allow the permit, then so are you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter is Emily Sutton, followed by Maria Palmer.
Good evening, I'm Emily Sutton. I'm the Executive Director and Haw River Keeper at Haw River Assembly. Our mission is to protect the Haw River and Jordan Lake, but I'm also here speaking on behalf of our communities who would be impacted by this permit if approved. So I'm here tonight along with many others to ask that the agencies deny this permit. UNC has acknowledged the dangers of burning coal and has even committed to phase out coal completely by 2020. But not only has that promise been broken, but this permit modification continues to allow for coal burning, but adds new threats. Those new threats include volatile organic chemicals, lead, benzene, acrolein, and PFAS. This proposal would allow unknown levels of unknown toxins to be released into the air and into the lungs of our communities. Convergent has stated that these pellets may contain a wide range of anywhere between 15 to 49% plastic. That ambiguity of the contents of these pellets pose unknown risks to North Carolinians. My work as riverkeeper is focused on water quality, not air quality. However, we know that what goes up in the air stacks comes down into our drinking water supplies. North Carolina has received international attention for our contaminated water crisis due to toxic PFAS discharges into surface water. Haw River Assembly is constantly inundated with requests for help from community members who are trying to keep their families safe after learning that their water supplies are contaminated. But these toxins are not only getting into water supplies from industrial wastewater discharges. This agency is far too familiar with the Gen X crisis, where the air stacks were also a significant source of the toxic exposure, contaminating groundwater and surface water for an 18-mile radius around the Chemours plant. The EPA has released a maximum contaminant level for PFAS of 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFOS. The maximum contaminant level goal, however, for PFOA and PFOS is 0. This permit has stated that the pellets can contain up to 8 nanograms per gram, so that's 8,000 parts per trillion. That's 2,000 times higher than the EPA's maximum contaminant level goal. Drinking water contamination has been a traumatic reality for hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians. I've sat with dozens of families at their kitchen tables and in public hearings and meetings with their representatives while they struggle to understand what the impacts on their health is and how to find alternative sources of safe drinking water for their families. There is not an alternative air supply for the communities surrounding this plant, so please deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Maria Palmer, followed by Matthew Spalding.
Good evening. I'm Maria Palmer, founding pastor in the 90s of the first Spanish language church in this area in Chapel Hill. I'm now back as a member of Iglesia Unida, and most of the members of my congregation are at the church learning English, getting tutoring, and the leadership of United Churches in Colombia building homes. So I'm here as a member of our community to ask you to deny this permit. Many of the people in the church I founded worked and still work at UNC in maintenance and housekeeping. They clock out and clock in right by the co-generating plant. On their behalf and of all our families, we want to ask you to deny this and not to allow UNC to conduct an experiment with the air we breathe without our consent. We can't opt out of this experiment, not us and not for our children. I don't know who the administrators are who requested this permit. Are they not concerned for their own children? Or do they not live in Chapel Hill? Do they trust that expensive filters will keep them safe from exposure to poisonous PFAS and chemicals? In our faith community, we believe all people are God's children and that we should protect all of them, as well as the environment. We need to say no to risky experiments that harm any of our residents. There is no doubt that burning trash, even wrapped in fancy names, is bad for God's creation. My church begs you to keep the faith with our community and deny this permit. And I'm totally blown away by all the science that has been shared. They totally convinced me that this is scientifically wrong, but it's also morally wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Matthew Spalding, followed by Jennifer Newell.
Hello. My name is Matt. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I have 2 little kids, so I don't get out of the house much after 7. I actually didn't come here intending to speak, but when I got here, the line was much shorter if you agreed to speak. So I grew up in North Carolina, and I now live just down the street from the plant with my partner and our 2 kids. One's 1, one's 2. I was previously an air quality consultant at Ramble Environ for a number of years. I left there, and so I'm kind of out of the business, but when I saw the permit modification come up, I popped it open, and I was like, wow, I still recognize all these words. I worked on a lot of Title V facility permit renewals, permit modifications, emissions inventories, so I know the hard work that goes into these kind of documents and the rigor with which this stuff gets analyzed. Some of the facilities I worked on were coal power plants in Maryland, glass manufacturing plants, a lot of natural gas power plants, and a bunch of other ones. Pretty much everywhere has a large boiler. While I would love to see UNC move towards greener solutions and renewable energy sources, I can appreciate the financial reality and how hard that is. Having worked in air quality, I have a lot of faith in the permitting process, and I have a lot of faith in you, the people who will ultimately guide us with this decision. I'm excited to see a permit modification to shift us away from coal. I appreciate the NSPS, the NESHAPs, all those analyses, and I'm pretty sure I read there was some dispersion modeling exercise done to support the permit modification, and that yielded an analysis showing that no surrounding area would be outside the ambient air standards for TAPs. Yes, if under the current calculations, this would result in an increase in NOx, VOCs, CO, and lead, but a number of my peers, including Southern Environmental Law Center, have all failed to mention that we would also see huge drops in sulfur dioxide, PM10 and PM2.5. I feel that that is slightly misleading on their part. So the drop that we're calculating for sulfur dioxide would be 240,000 pounds coming out of the air. And the increase in lead that they keep talking about, 50 pounds. So I'm really, I'm not for coal, I'm not really for pellets, and I'm very much not for bad science. I appreciate the standard methodologies used in calculating these emissions, and the methodologies for the criteria pollutants, the HAPs, a bunch of the other notable pollutants, all very standard, all looks very good, but the calculations for PFAS emissions are appalling. The methodology is unsound, and so my ask for you is to require certain composition of the fuel materials, set standards there, require quarterly emissions testing, clarify the amount of fuel that can be burned. Right now, as the permit's structured, you'd allow 87, 60 hours of it a year, which is that's not a test. That's like just full burning. And I would ask you to tighten up the monitoring requirements of it as well. So, like I said, I'm not against the burning of the pellets, but I am against the bad science, and that's what's in the application today. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next speaker, Jennifer Newell, followed by Hope Gailey.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Newell, and first of all, thank you so much for moving this here. For some reason, I'm on the Triangle Blog Blogs newsletter list, and thanks to them, I found out all about this. I have been a resident of Chapel Hill for over 20 years. I raised all three of my children here and love the town. I've always been interested in PFAS and VOCs and lowering our exposure to these ever since I had my first child in 1997. That's why when I found out that this was even being considered, my radar went up, and I wanted to be here tonight. I'm not a scientist, and I'm just a mom. Shouldn't say just, but the ladies in front of me, they did such a great job going over the science, so I'm not going to repeat that, and I probably wouldn't do as good a job as they did. But nevertheless, this is a big concern for moms. We know, what I know about PFAS is that we're trying to reduce our exposure, our cumulative exposure to it, not increase it. And with this plant or this move to these pellets, it would increase our exposure. It's in everything, and it's in our foods, it's in our leggings, it's in our contact lenses, believe it or not. It's in our breast milk, and it's very concerning. I did want to add just a couple of things. When I was doing my research, I noticed that the conversion says that its pellets are 60% paper and 40% plastic on average. But we also know that paper is also coated with PFAS or those types of chemicals, and it can accumulate in recycled paper and wood pulp. So that also needs to be taken into account as well. And then also to truly understand the environmental impact of the overall pollutant load. We also have to look at the emissions from the paper mills and plastic factories where conversion also gets their components, as well as their plant. So when you kind of layer all of those together, it does increase the amount of pollution, if we want to compare apples to apples. And then also in a 2023 study in the International Journal of Life Cycle Assessment, it also showed that the pellets emitted more greenhouse gases than coal or natural gas when original production emissions were included. So that's something else to consider. And we also know that our drinking water in North Carolina is being polluted by PFAS as well. So I just, how much do I have? Just one more minute, okay. Anyway.
You're out.
I'm out. All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Hope Gailey, followed by Kimmy Diver.
Good evening. My name is Hope. I'm a medical student at UNC and a divinity student at the Duke Divinity School. I am speaking on my own behalf, but I have also been a part of Climate Leadership and Environmental Action Network at UNC School of Medicine. I'm an alumna of Carolina, graduated with a degree in biology, and I'm a resident of the historic Macaulay district. I see the plant, I hear the plant, and I see the coal in the train every day. I'm a lover of Chapel Hill, and I'm a person who believes our health and our existence is intimately tied to the air, water, food, and all the things that we intake in the world around us. I'm really, really grateful for this community today, and I'm very impressed by everyone who has shown up to be an advocate for themselves and for their grandchildren and for the number of generations ahead of us. I am here because I want to propose several questions. First, how does this support the university's and Chapel Hill's aim to be a national leader in innovation and make the downtown a walkable social community and business center just a street away from the boilers? Approval of this permit is the antithesis of the hopeful imagination of all who love Chapel Hill. Can the university and health system honestly say they are patient-centered by endorsing a public experiment, adding new variables, and a new unknown? We've heard from many scientists and many experts. We have heard the numbers. But from my perspective, approving this permit would be irresponsible and echoes too strongly of the U.S. public health service experiments of the 20th century that lasted 40 years, well beyond the need for that study, if you can even say that it was a need. I'm concerned that UNC Hospitals is already causing harm or is complicit in this harm through this coal and natural gas plant, and counter to the ethic of medicine to do no harm. I'm concerned that this proposal will cause new illness and injury, which will of course take energy to treat, leading into an unreasonable feedback loop of ever-increasing need for energy and illness. I would love to hear the explanation from UNC about the alternative fuel sources they have considered in detail. Why does the university propose these synthetic pellets over other known safe renewable sources? Can the public see that analysis? How can the community trust an institution that has changed its climate initiatives too many times and recently eliminated DEI initiatives while its potential impacts of PFAS, dioxins, etc. will disproportionately impact vulnerable populations? This is not a matter of the public's ability to trust the institution, but rather of UNC Hospitals, and UNC Health are a trustworthy institution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next speaker is Kenny Diver, followed by Amir Hader.
Good evening. My name is Kemi Diver, and I'm representing myself. I'm an environmental science and policy major, and I'm very passionate about environmental justice and clean energy. I ask that the DAQ reject the proposed air permit modifications to the UNC coal plant due to the insufficient benefits and environmental risks associated with burning the conversion waste pellets, which fail to qualify as a truly sustainable energy source. UNC is aware of the urgent need to transition from burning coal and invest in a cleaner energy source that emits less carbon and toxic byproducts. Their proposed plan to expand their current air permit to allow for the burning of wood pellets is an insufficient change in terms of this need, and it does not serve as a true step forward in advancing the university's climate action plan. As it has been stated many times, there is a lack of consideration for the environmental and public health consequences of burning these pellets, and this is apparent in the request for the air permit modification. The local residents by the plant represent a historically marginalized community, and if these permit modifications were passed, they would bear the added threat of PFAS exposure alongside the consequences they have undergone living nearby to the coal plant. As these safeguards remain absent from the current permit, I sincerely urge you to think about the additional testing and monitoring of toxic metals, PFAS, and the other emissions that would be necessary for regulating the plant and keeping the surrounding community safe. In general, I think this plan sugarcoats the appeal of burning wood pellets instead of coal, stating that carbon emissions will be reduced when in UNC's own application, it is stated that carbon emissions are only projected to see a 12% decrease. This is a negligible improvement. especially when considering the timeline of UNC's broader climate goals and the urgency required to transition to truly sustainable and impactful green energy solutions, so it is not an improvement. Framing this transition as progress is misleading. We have set coal as the lowest standard for improvement, which does not justify adopting another harmful energy source, literally burning plastic for fuel. By continuing to perpetuate environmental injustices and neglecting to address the distinct damages of burning wood pellets, UNC is establishing a precedent that undermines the integrity of its climate action plan and commitments to striving for carbon neutrality. Based on this analysis of the likely and long-lasting effects of burning wood pellets, coupled with their minimal clean energy benefits, I urge you, Mr. Taylor, and the rest of the panel sitting here today, to reject the proposed draft air quality permit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Amir Haidari, followed by Fisher Milan.
Hello, my name is Amir Haidari, a sophomore at Duke University studying economics and a lifelong resident of North Carolina. Today I wish to express my deep concerns about UNC's proposal to transition from coal to burning waste pellets made from industrial paper and plastic waste as part of its climate action plan. While the initiative's goal to reduce reliance on coal is commendable, the chosen method introduces substantial risks that have not been fully acknowledged or addressed in the current proposal. The waste pellets in question, potentially containing up to 49% plastic, are expected to significantly increase emissions of harmful pollutants such as nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, and lead. These pollutants have severe implications for air quality and public health, particularly for vulnerable populations such as the elderly who already suffer from higher rates of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. The location of the proposed pellet burning facility is alarmingly close to several critical areas. It lies less than a mile from historically black neighborhoods like Northside and Pine Mills and the UNC hospital system. These communities, historically subjected to disproportionate environmental burdens, stand to face increased health risks due to escalated air pollution levels. In my weekly senior center volunteering in the local area, I witnessed firsthand the struggles of seniors dealing with chronic health issues exacerbated by environmental factors. Introducing more pollutants into the air they breathe could drastically worsen these conditions, leading to higher medical costs and a diminished quality of life, which they can ill afford. These are not merely potential outcomes, these are real risks that require immediate attention and stringent regulatory oversight. Furthermore, the variability in the composition of the waste pellets poses another significant risk. The draft permit's assumptions based on outdated and potentially inaccurate data about pellet composition could lead to underestimations of actual emissions. Recent statements from the manufacturers suggest that the plastic content could be much higher than previously reported, needing a reevaluation of the emission projections and health impact assessments. Additionally, the permit's lack of rigorous monitoring for PFAS is particularly troubling. Given the known risks associated with these chemicals, it is imperative that more comprehensive testing and monitoring are implemented to protect public health, especially that of seniors and residents of nearby communities. While the goal of transitioning away from coal is vital for our environmental sustainability, the method proposed by UNC risks undermining the health of our most vulnerable population. I urge the DEQ to mandate stricter emissions testing, regular reevaluations of pellet composition, and enhanced PFAS monitoring. We must ensure that our efforts to achieve a greener future do not come at the expense of the health and well-being of our community members. Thank you for your time in considering the full scope of implications this proposal holds for our seniors in historically black neighborhoods located near the UNC facility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Fisher Milan, followed by Myra Pross.
Hello, I'm Fisher Mallon. I'm a student studying environmental science and economics between UNC and Duke University. I'm asking the Division of Air Quality to deny the draft air quality permit to burn conversion waste pellets at UNC Chapel Hill's cogeneration facility. The risk-reward ratio of burning conversion pellets does not justify this permit's approval. First, the health impacts on surrounding communities of combusting conversion waste pellets are either unfavorable or uncertain. UNC's permit application shows that the combustion of the pellets will increase harmful pollutants, including nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, and lead, all those that you've heard tonight. Additionally, we know the plastics that Convergent uses in its pellets contain PFAS. The frequency of testing that UNC has proposed is insufficient to detect impacts from the varying composition of Convergent waste pellets. This draft air quality permit should have provided for quarterly and more robust testing of PFAS emissions. For students and residents of this community, the prospect of increased and uncertain pollution is frightening and unacceptable. Secondly, the transition to Convergent waste pellets results in minimal CO2 emission reductions that do not justify the risks that it poses. UNC's application estimates only a 12% decrease in CO2 emissions, and the study published from the International Journal of Life Cycle Assessment showed that when accounting for the production of plastic and paper, Convergent waste pellets emitted more greenhouse gases than coal. This evidence makes one thing clear. Waste pellets are not the low carbon alternative to coal that UNC and Convergent tout. This begs the question of UNC and you members sitting here today. Is it worth taking the risk of jeopardizing student and resident health for the minimal carbon emission reductions offered by Convergent waste pellets? We do not think so. If UNC is seriously committed to transitioning away from coal and decarbonizing its power generation system and protecting the health of the community in which it is located, it should invest in heat-based renewable alternatives. For these reasons, I urge the DAQ not to approve the draft air quality permit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Larry Prowse, followed by Schuler Bain.
What's the name again? I think it might have been my name.
It's
Miri
Prowse.
Miri? Okay, yeah.
Miri, sorry.
You're fine. I should have put like how to pronounce it on there. Hello, my name is Miri. I'm a student at UNC Chapel Hill. I also live in Pine Knolls, which, as other people have mentioned, is one of the historically black neighborhoods that surrounds the cogeneration plant. I look out of the window of my house and I can see it. Many of my friends and other people I know and people I really care about also live near the plant. This is my community with young children and elderly folks and immunocompromised folks. And I'm concerned about what is going into our lungs whenever we step out of our houses or apartments and breathe. I am concerned about the pollutants produced by burning coal, and I am concerned about the pollutants produced by burning pellets that may contain up to 49% plastic. I suspect that the administrators at UNC who decided to apply for the modification of the permit just don't care about these potential impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods of burning PFAS, if they even know about them. They obviously also don't care very much about the carbon emission levels, given that their permit modification application estimates that replacing coal with the proposed pellets would only decrease carbon emissions by 12%. What the administrators at UNC do care about is the public perception of the university. And they appear to have thought they could pull a fast one on the public simply by replacing coal with some other less infamous fuel. The amount of people in this room shows that they are wrong. We see past their sleight of hand. Some folks have mentioned that it would be very expensive for UNC to implement a real solution that transitions away from the burning of carbon fuels at this plant entirely. And in some ways that is true, but expensive is a relative term. The expense of decarbonization would be in dollars, whereas the expense of continuing to burn coal or of burning the proposed pellets containing PFAS is an expense in people's health and lives. We cannot afford to pay in lives, whereas UNC can absolutely pay in dollars to decarbonize the plant. Chancellor Lee Roberts makes $600,000 per year. Provost Chris Clements makes a little less, only over $400,000. And Bill Belichick, UNC's new football coach, recently signed a contract where if he stays for all 5 years, the university will pay him $10 million per year. If there's any time for radical action to decarbonize this plant, it was yesterday. It was 20 years ago, it was 50 years ago, it was already too late, it was already a crisis. One of my friends who goes to school in Los Angeles knows multiple people whose homes burnt in the fires there recently. UNC's plant is contributing to these climate disasters across the world, just like it's directly harming people in my own local community. UNC must do better, and it must do better now. We do not want coal, and we do not want PFAS pellets. The lesser evil is not something we will accept, especially if it's part of the greenwashing strategy and might really be more evil in some ways. We want decarbonization, we want environmental justice, and we want you to reject this permit modification.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Schuyler Bain, followed by Rashir Vera. Skylar Bain. Okay. All right, Rashir Vora. All right, Jason Torian.
Good evening. My name is Jason Dorian, and I'm community organizer with Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. REDL has been part of Chapel Hill community for the last several years, first through our chapter organized here, and now through the No Coal UNC Coalition. If DEQ decides to approve this permit, to my knowledge, North Carolina will be the first state in REDL's 7-state footprint to allow the burning of convergence pellets as a fuel source. While it's positive that UNC is taking steps to end its dependency on coal, there will undoubtedly be unintended consequences for the Chapel Hill community with this transition as well. As we've heard a lot more eloquently than I can say throughout the night, this request is coming at a time when PFAS is more highly scrutinized than ever before. So I won't repeat all the data that's already been said. I will just say I'm coming here tonight to ask DEQ to deny the permit or let the university withdraw the permit and pursue other alternatives. We often hear from administrators that transitioning to renewable energy comes with high initial startup costs, but the burning of fossil fuels and waste pellets comes with astronomical indirect costs. For example, as a resident of Person County, which is home to a regional landfill, I have to ask, what community will the PFAS-laden ash from those pellets ultimately be dumped on? And what impact will it have on the air and water quality in that community? So I'll close by saying nothing provides more stability, nor more price stability than renewables, because there's typically no fuel costs. We don't have all the answers with respect to what a transition to renewables should look like for the university, but as we've been reminded throughout the night, we also don't have all the answers with respect to what this transition into waste pellets will look like and what consequences there will be from that. So I'll just finish by asking why we're willing to take a chance and experiment with burning waste, but we're not willing to take the same type of chances when it comes to the transition into renewable energy.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Lucy Zafir, followed by Jesse Zafir.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to hear my concerns. My name is Lucy, and I am a member of Sunrise Durham and Sunrise NCSSM, but what I'm saying right now is on behalf of my own opinions. And I've lived by UNC in Carver for my whole life. When I heard about the case for burning these engineered pellets, in addition to the coal and other fossil fuels used to create energy for the UNC campus, I grew worried. I do not know all of the facts, but I'm definitely open to hearing and learning as much as I can concerning the issue. These engineered pellets are said to increase emissions of carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and PFAS. However, it's also said that they will decrease emissions of sulfur dioxide and particulate matter. This is good news. Sulfur dioxide is classified as a major irritant as it aggravates asthma and irritates the eyes. If we can limit this, it is a win for our community. However, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and PFAS are not only severe irritants, but they are also classified as toxic. Nitrogen oxides do not only damage the respiratory system, as sulfur dioxide does, but they also increase acid rain, deplete the ozone layer, and cause smog. Furthermore, even low levels of carbon monoxide are toxic and accumulate in our bodies, causing headache and fatigue. Over time, these exposures build up to larger concentrations, which can lead to vomiting, chest pain, seizures, a loss of consciousness, and even death. Yes, what is already being emitted from UNC's power plant is bad, but to me, this seems worse. Another major concern of using these engineered pellets is that they contain PFAS. Engineered pellets, the research has been done on these engineered pellets, but so much more must be done, and it already does not look good. North Carolina itself has one of the worst exposures in all of the country to PFAS. Exposure to these chemicals have caused concentrations in our blood to accumulate and health effects such as thyroid dysfunction, fertility issues, and liver impairment, among others, to take over our bodies. But UNC and our community has another option. Now, I am a junior in high school, but my freshman year I spoke out against UNC's coal power plant to my school, and with many others called for its removal. This fight went beyond our school, as I have seen columns by UNC students too calling out and saying that something must be done. Neither of our options are pretty when it comes to this power plant. Instead, we have to start the transition to renewables now, as they are becoming increasingly more cost efficient and the process can be demanding to transition. 2030 is approaching quickly, the time when we have to reduce our emissions by 50% below 2005 levels, and the safety of our community right now is being threatened. Let us step away from this power plant altogether and instead invest our time and energy into renewables, which promise an actual future. I also have to say real quick that I'm just so angry that these pellets are even being considered. It's so sad that this technology is what we are turning to now, when there are plenty of other methods we can invest in, and my future is being compromised. I might die from cancer, I don't know, because of these emissions or whatever else is going to come up in my future. Zero emissions truly means zero, and I want this coal plant to be taken and removed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Saphir, followed by Marlene Wares.
And good evening. My name is Jesse Safer, and I'm resident of Chapel Harbor. I've been here for 32 years since I came here as a student at UNC. I got involved as a student early on in the Student Environmental Action Coalition, and we called for shutting down the coal power plant that was 32 years ago, and probably people were calling for it earlier than that. It's shocking that this is where we are 32 years later, that we're just talking about burning something different. And burning any kind of fuel is never going to be good for our planet. It's never going to be good for our air, for our water, for our health. You've heard from so many countless experts this evening, experts in their field, people who studied, community members and organizations and people affiliated with UNC and other universities and businesses around here to do research in this thing. You've heard from all the experts. I haven't heard anybody in favor of UNC burning anything. Obviously burning coal is bad, but burning trash is also bad. So I would strongly encourage you to go tell UNC that this is not a plan for moving forward and being a leader as a university in terms of what we can do to protect our planet, stop climate change or reduce climate change effects. We need to do a lot more, and UNC is a premier university, and I'm a proud alumni of UNC Chapel Hill. I want my university to be a leader in this area, and I want it to take more dramatic steps other than saying we're just going to start burning something else that pollutes in other ways. So I think UNC can do a whole lot better, and I expect a lot more of UNC. And as a resident of this community, I want clean air and clean water like everyone else. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Marlene Wares, followed by Herb.
Hello, my name is Madeline Wares, and I'm here representing the Community Outreach Club at Cargo High School, where I'm a senior. So when I was 2 years old, my family moved here from DC to avoid the congestion of a big city. I grew up playing outside in the forests and the streams here. And I'm here because I care about my community. I care about the children I babysit. I care about the negative effects that this will have on the health of the surrounding communities. With the hurricane that devastated Western North Carolina last year, As well as the wildfires in LA, UNC should stand as a beacon of climate justice and sustainability, not as a model of environmental discrimination and greenwashing. And when you're making the decision, I want you to remember that the legacy of the decision you make will end up in the lungs of the children in the area for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is Kaya Her, followed by Haley Cohen.
Hi, my name is Kaya Kerr. I live in Chapel Hill and I attend Carver High School. I am also representing Community Outreach Club. So UNC's stated intention of burning plastic pellets is to increase its sustainability efforts. And generally the purpose of sustainability would be considered to protect the environment and human health. But as many of the amazing experts around us have told us, it is detrimental to human health and to the environment. So therefore, there is no sustainable benefit to UNC's proposed plan. And then also the health impacts include cancer, and then there's also the added factor of environmental racism. And so when given the choice to do something that may cause people to get cancer and enable environmental racism, or to not do those things, make the right choice and do not choose cancer and environmental racism. Let's prevent the apocalypse together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Haley Cohen, followed by Kareem Brown. Kareem Brown.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kareem Brown. I've been a resident of Orange County for over a decade, and I'm here to represent myself as well as my community and friends. I'm not here to throw a bunch of data at you. The experts have been here the whole time. I'm just here to implore you to make a choice that's good for the community. I was listening to the radio the other day and they were talking about red number 3, about it being finally banned by the FDA, even though 30 years ago they knew it had some potential health issues. I don't want to be 30 years down the road finally talking about having to take PFAS out of our rivers and air because we didn't vote it on the right time. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, Rubber City. I grew up with the scary stories of having gray, smoggy skies and all the people who worked in the factories who had to suffer the health issues. I hope we're not adding another brick into the road of Flint. I don't want to put fear in people, but I want to put the responsibility that you were elected here to make the right choice for our community and the people who live here, not just for today, but for years down the road, for decisions that may seem simple and contrived now, but will be permanent and have consequences down the road. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, I have our last speaker as Jackson Lockyer.
Good evening. I'm a UNC student and I'm representing myself. As a freshman here, I took a class as an introduction to the university. We read the inaugural address of Chancellor House given over a century ago. His mission statement was very clear. The university's purpose is to serve the people of North Carolina and equip them to improve the greater welfare beyond the state borders. An emissive plant with unknown physiological side effects for the town's residents does not sound like an improvement of general welfare. I also conducted a case study in which I considered the current ramifications of historic redlining in our neighbor, Durham. Historically black neighborhoods should not be the testing ground for the ambiguous health detriments of PFAS. I envision a much longer term solution to appreciate the value of our community, not weaken our bodies and just direct attention to presumably healthier petroleum consumption. Please consider rejecting the proposal and hold the institution to the standard we know they're capable of. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll go back to a couple of names that we called just in case. There was Schuler Bain, Rashir Vora, and Haley Cowing. Great. That is all of the names I have for those registered to speak. If you did not speak tonight but still want to provide comments on the draft air quality permit for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, remember there are several other ways to provide comments until the end of the comment period on Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. You may call 919-707-8448 and leave a voicemail message with your first and last name, whom you are representing, and state your comments related to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill permit. You can provide written comments via email to daq.publiccomments@deq.nc.gov with UNC.24A in the subject line. You can use postal mail to submit written comments to the address listed in the public notice. Mailed comments must be postmarked by Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. You may also submit written comments tonight in the box placed near the microphone. Based on the information received during tonight's public hearing and comments received throughout the comment period, I will make a recommendation to the Director of the Division of Air Quality for his consideration in making a final decision on the draft air quality permit for University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Thank you all for your cooperation, attendance, and interest in the air quality permitting process. This public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
I butchered those names in my mind.
Oh, I tried to, if it was unclear, I put it on the sheets themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.